What's a real-life jump scare that happens in normal day-to-day life? When I was working retail, I got so used to turning a corner and finding a customer just standing there that my startled response for a long time was, "Oh hi. Can I help you?" I went to a haunted house and asked a clown that jumped out at me if he needed assistance. Then I realized WHST I did, apologized, and said, "Oh, I work retail," and booked it to the next scare in shame. I could hear him laughing at me as I power walked away. I can safely assure you there is nothing more humiliating than a spooky clown laughing at you. With a car made for it, reasonable speed and good driving, you have a good chance at survival. I live in Sweden and we have about 5,000 moose traffic accidents per year, but only around 10 die of it per year. It still happens, of course. It happened right outside my street a few years ago with a bike rider who was speeding and didn't make it. Though yes, the moose is very likely to either die in the accident or be euthanized by a local hunter's rifle. If you want a moose-safe car, a fake Volvo is the best. As a brand with roots in Sweden, it has always been a big concern of theirs. I know one of their engineers and it's still a high priority. They reinforce the crash cage a lot to withstand the impact of a moose. Even saw a prototype vehicle of theirs where they went overboard with the crash cage with massive beams. They had to cut back on it though, as they became so huge that they started limiting visibility. That prototype frame looked more like it was made for professional racing than regular driving, but it was on a family car model. Best is of course to avoid accidents altogether. Used to see a moose while driving every second week or so when I lived in the woods. Never collided though because I always kept my speed in check and a watchful eye. Adjusting your mirrors properly helps a ton with this. You should only see the faintest sliver of your own car in the mirror, if any at all. I need like a little sliver so I still have something to ground my frame of reference, but otherwise I run my mirrors pointing out as far as I can. Although more modern cars with blind spot monitoring systems are nice, I can see the amber indicator light up on my mirror in my peripheral vision even if I'm not looking at that mirror. Many people don't understand this. They think their side mirrors are for scanning the side of your car, I guess to see if a gremlin is crawling up your wheel well. They also often claim they can't orient themselves if the mirrors are pointed outwards and they can't see the side of the car. Once you adjust them properly and learn to trust them, you virtually eliminate blind spots. As a car that is passing you is no longer visible in the rear view mirror, it becomes immediately visible in your side mirror and then in the periphery of your eye. No shoulder checks required. But I do love the lane change feature. Every car should alert you that there is someone in your blind spot. At the call center I worked at in the 90s, we used NetSend from the command line to send messages to each other or to the whole call center. My best friend and I had been talking about one of our co-workers who frequently was braless and often had very visible and prominent nipples. After one of these times I said to my friend, "What did you call it when Stacy was pointy?" "Nipplerific." And after I hit enter I heard it popping up on all the terminals around me. I had chosen the wrong NetSend from the run history. A few minutes later my friend comes over to where I'm cowering in my cubicle and she whispered it was breastacular. I've lived in a top-floor apartment for almost 30 years and so I've learned to walk lightly so as not to disturb my neighbors too much. We had a crazy set below us for a while who left multiple nasty grams about us walking around our place after 9 p.m. because it disturbed their sleep, and given that they were insane to start with I didn't want to provoke them any more than I had to. I've had to learn to walk loudly enough that people hear me after I made my manager cry because I scared her so badly. My partner does this, Gets me sometimes multiple times a day. Like, they make no noise no matter what. Hard floor? No noise. Gets up out of a chair? No noise. Just fucking silent. Smashed a glass a couple days ago because I was getting one out of the cupboard, turned round, and there they fucking are. Shrieked a bit and dropped the glass. They were gaming at their desk 2 fucking seconds ago. How the fuck did they get right behind me in the kitchen that fast with no noise? They swear up and down they don't do it on purpose. I claim they're lying because it happens almost every day and surely they must know by now. I know that I do this, but I don't do it on purpose, and it's really hard to undo after learning one way for all my life. If I told you that you eat really quietly, it'd be hard for you to suddenly just switch up and slurp and burp and say a loud audible ah after every gulp. It would feel really unnatural to you and be really uncomfortable, especially if you were raised that it's very rude to do so. I'm trying to keep keys in my pocket so I at least make some noise walking around, but that's also a habit that's hard to unlearn. After I come home from work, I just empty out my pockets onto my nightstand, so I don't lose any of my keys or wallet, and then it means I'm silent moving around. Just last night, I scared my roommate, who was doing laundry, and I just walked into the kitchen next door and he literally jumped up in fear seeing I was suddenly there. I don't really recognize people outside of the context I normally interact with them. One time I was at the store and I see this woman walking straight towards me. She's clearly not walking just in my general direction, but directly to me. I'm her target. Start to panic. She gets closer and closer, I can see her face clearly, her eyes are locking on. Turn around and start to flee. Hear her call my name. I recognize that voice, can't quite put my finger on where I heard it though. Hesitate, then turn around, stare for a few seconds. It's Sarah, who I've seen every single day at work for the past 8 years. My ex of 6 years went through nursing school and started her career while we were together, and my God did it change my opinion of nurses. Her peers were about 40% decent people trying to help others and 60% the absolute worst control freaks and narcissists I've ever seen in a professional setting. And that same portion acted like they were doctors with some vast medical knowledge. So when there are a herd of crazy nurses turning anti-vax, I'm not surprised in the least. Seeing the curriculum firsthand, nurses don't really learn a whole lot of medicine. They're much more about safety, process, and how to respond to situations with a tiny bit of pharmacology mixed in. So anytime a nurse starts making strong medical claims, I tend to get suspicious. One time during a night out, a girl collapsed from being too drunk or high or something. She was breathing and had a pulse, but was unresponsive. My friends and I were like 10 feet away, so we turned her on her side and called 911. Some girl comes screaming at us that we need to be doing CPR. We told her that the unconscious girl was breathing and had a pulse. You're not supposed to do CPR unless their heart stops. The screaming girl then started screaming even louder, "I'm a nurse, I know better than some assholes," and tried to fight through us to give unnecessary CPR to the poor girl. She even tried to correct the paramedics when they arrived. Some nurses really think they're God's gift to medicine. With mental health nursing in particular, there's the unfortunate effect whereby compassionate, caring people get so emotionally drained and burned out by the work that they leave the profession, meaning a disproportionate amount of those left over are the kind that either never did or have just stopped connecting with patients as human beings, which can result in vulnerable patients being further traumatized by their time in care. Honestly, the ones who still care and keep their compassion are saints for doing such a hard job and absolutely deserve to be paid more for doing it. Still covered by Kaiser, I went to the urgent care again some months later, which was so large it was split into two semi-autonomous units. The receptionist asked if I wanted to go to Dr. So-and-so's side or Nurse Ratchet, to which I blurted out no. The receptionist's expression told me this was common. The boss paying for Kaiser had a heart attack and was in the hospital for a few days. He said the nurses greeted him the first morning with, "We didn't think you were going to make it through the night." I got the distinct impression they reached a point in his blood thinner maintenance where they decided he was too expensive. Long story short, he ended up with a stroke, which I correctly diagnosed over the phone when I found his smashed car at the shop one weekend and called his house. The staff at Kaiser collectively took like 3 inpatient days to conclude the same. Quick story. I used to work at a hospital and was part of a team that helped bariatric patients. Every now and then we would get a call about a patient death and would be charged with transporting the body to the morgue. We get a call and it is a larger person, very flabby. As we are waiting for the nurse to enter the room to assist, one of my teammates was casually just bumping his knee against the bed. This was causing the body to jiggle a bit. The nurse comes in and sees movement and screams the patient is still alive. And then runs out of the room to get more help. We were just dumbfounded and couldn't hold in our laughter when the charge nurse came running in. That nurse was scary dumb. Wasn't the last stupid thing she ever did. She ended up quitting nursing as she had quit teaching prior to that. Feel sorry for whatever career she is in now. That's an easy one. Lots of gamers go on to school to become game devs, but lots of gamers are idiots. It's the same problem with new restaurant owners. People spend their entire lives going to restaurants as the customers and always experience the relaxed, stress-free atmosphere that comes with being served food, but never see the extreme level of labor and stress that goes into actually running a restaurant. Gamers always play games but will never ever understand the insane level of complexity of AAA games development, the dozens of departments all communicating, so goodbye all those antisocial Redditor types, the breakneck deadlines, the labor-intensive debugging, the monumental scale of making a game from scratch if it's a new IP. With the way gamers talk about game devs, you think half the stuff just pops in out of thin air. And then gamers have the gall to act like adding new content to a game is a simple task and that devs are just lazy or incompetent. I've seen some insane expectations over the decade I've been in online communities. Simple stuff like thinking making a new character skin only takes a few hours of work because it's just art. Sorry for the rant, but gamers frustrates me. Gamers always play games but will never ever understand the insane level of complexity of AAA games development, the dozens of departments all communicating, so goodbye all those antisocial Redditor types, the breakneck deadlines, the labor-intensive debugging, the monumental scale of making a game from scratch if it's a new IP. With the way gamers talk about game devs, you think half the stuff just pops in out of thin air. And then gamers have the gall to act like adding new content to a game is a simple task and that devs are just lazy or incompetent. I've seen some insane expectations over the decade I've been in online communities. Simple stuff like thinking making a new character skin only takes a few hours of work because it's just art. Sorry for the rant, but gamers frustrates me. You fool, I've made a platformer in Scratch/S if it's not obvious. If you are someone who wants to be a game designer, consider trying to be a dungeon master and run a mini campaign with your friends, just to see. You'll realize quickly that making a story, quests, NPCs, a world, factions, environments, loot, monsters, a main bad guy, etc. any one of these things is really hard to do well on their own. And being a DM is just for your buddies who come over to play some D&D. Imagine doing that, but your audience is now any gamer who might be interested. Of course, you would specialize in one role, maybe dabble in others, if you try to join a big company. But it's a fine exercise nonetheless, as it exposes you to a ton of different roles. I took some business classes when I was in engineering school. Figured it would come in handy. Boy, was that an eye-opener. You'd be working alongside people who couldn't understand the basic algebraic equations that tell you profit/loss or cost of goods sold and so forth. Math just wasn't their thing. And you'd want to take them by the shoulders and shake them awake, like, hey dumbass, money is a numbers game. If you want to be good with money, you'd better get good with numbers. No clue. Can't understand a simple equation, and they're gonna hope Excel will bail them out when the time comes. But they suck at Excel too. Step 1, meetings. Step 3, get rich. Just amazingly dumb people. While I've had some great teachers, some were absolute trash. I had a teacher who once taught a CAP extension course, which was essentially volunteering for the community. I can't remember fully, but I think in order to be considered for the class, you had to have a certain GPA. Regardless, the class consisted of all students with decent grades. We all had a giant group term project that we had to initially present to the class. In total, there were 6 groups to present over a class and half. When it came time to present, our teacher, who I'll call Ms. Aaron, said we would be grading our fellow classmates and their presentations. The first group was about to go up when she added in the fun little fact that we can only give one group 10/10, one group 9/10, and so on. Ms. Aaron started threatening people with zeros if no one went up, which only caused further havoc. For the rest of the class, we just sat there all screaming at her while she screamed back at us. It was freaking mayhem. Obviously nothing was resolved as class ended, so we all just packed up our stuff and continued to talk about it for the rest of the day. The following morning, back we went to class, and instead of seeing Ms. Aaron, we saw the teacher who started the class, Ms. Garfunkel. Ms. Garfunkel started to lay into us about respecting our teachers, and Ms. Aaron is simply following the course outline, so if we don't like what is happening, we should see her and we shouldn't attack Ms. Aaron. I had something similar happen. Back when I was at uni, we had a class where the teacher was an older man named Ray. If anyone had missed a single lesson during the term, he would dock half your grade, so the highest you could get was 50%. He told us this in the first class, but we all laughed and thought he was joking. You needed 40% to pass the class at the lowest grade, so when everyone got their grades back after the final assignment, about 90% of the class, including me, failed. Shit hit the fan and everyone complained about him. The assignments were regraded and the teacher was fired a few days later. Turns out he had worked there for many years and had pulled similar shit like this for years, but only this year he introduced a much larger penalty than he ever did before. Apparently before he would do shit like dock 5 or 10% here or there on assignments for minor stuff like spelling mistakes, wrong reference style, or arriving late to classes. This grumpy man looked to be in his 60s, so God know how many people he fucked over in all the time he was there. This was minor in comparison, but it had to do with a science teacher in high school. Near the start of the year we had a project. We were supposed to do a poster on some science and technology thing that interested us. I was a big space nerd, so I did one on the Saturn V rocket. I didn't just do a poster, I actually made a model of it from cardboard tubes and suspended it from the poster in a kind of 3D pop-out. She gave me a perfect score because, well, I had put effort in where basically nobody else had. Near the end of the year, we got another poster project. We were supposed to use it to do a presentation, with us drawing topics out of a hat. I drew solar power, so I went all in. I went way outside the specs, and made a model of a solar power station, the molten salt type, with all the mirrors around it. I still remember that much, along with all the information and articles I could find in an informational diorama. She marked me much lower. I asked why, figuring it was because technically I was supposed to make a poster, and had gone outside the rules in my enthusiasm. Her answer? Well, I gave you a perfect score last time. If I did it again this time, it wouldn't be fair to the other students.